Hello everyone, welcome to the show. I want to introduce to you my first guest on the show, Mr. Loy Brunson.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and in front of your video audience.
Well, good to have you here. Now, you guys, let me just tell you that I do know him a little more than a lot of you because he happens to be my brother. And he came all the way from, you came all the way from next door, didn't you?
Yeah, I live next door, basically.
Okay, but seriously though, this guy here, he has developed a book, Constitution book, that's unlike any other Constitution book in the world. I mean, you will make that claim, right?
Yes, absolutely. It makes all other pocket constitutions, actually makes, now this is really hard for people to listen to, and they might, get upset with it, but I love a challenge talking about it. This really makes all other publications of the Constitution obsolete.
Okay, now that's quite a bold statement. And it's not like you rewrote the Constitution. You have the Constitution there, but you're explaining things about the Constitution. You call those explanations the 7 discoveries.
Yes. Well, when I started reading the Constitution and discovering things, I figured everyone knew this stuff already, and I was just starting to catch up to them. But as I Google searched and talked to authorities on the Constitution, I basically found out that no one had ever really studied the document correctly. No one. I couldn't find anyone that had really read the Constitution correctly.
Okay,
and I'm still trying to find that person. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, right? But that's the way it is.
And you've talked to a lot of major people, like Ron Mann. Tell us a little bit about Ron. Yeah. He actually did a foreword on your book, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Ronald M. Mann. He served President Ronald Reagan in the White House for 4 years as a special assistant. Had a lot of very special assignments from him. And then he was appointed by President Reagan to be the deputy director of the bicentennial celebration of the Constitution for the federal government. And he raised quite a few millions of dollars to have a pocket constitution printed and distributed, about 45 million of them.
Oh, wow. Wow. So he agrees with your 7 discoveries.
Yes.
Okay. So I think this is incredible because you sent me a poster, and could we put the poster on the screen? What does that say right there? So that says, how and why promoting socialism is a felony.
Now, the book contains the documents. It contains the Constitution, the amendments, the Declaration of Independence. And then it also has these discoveries and these concepts explained.
Well, let's go into a little bit. This is kind of a short show for what you had to talk about. But let's first of all talk about taxes.
I explain in the book how the Constitution actually provides a tax-free system. Complete tax-free system, right down to sales tax.
Okay, now people are going to say, well, without taxes, you will not have the street to drive on. So of course you've thought of that.
Well, of course, I had to ask those questions myself to prove the concepts were correct, and the Constitution backs it all up. It's the connecting of the dots, and so you have to ask those questions and have those answers, solid answers. I had to do that before I published the book.
So you're basically saying that we don't need taxation. You're saying that it maybe is against the Constitution?
The book basically shows how it's not constitutional. Any taxation is not constitutional. But it also provides the plan to fund government without any taxation. In order to understand the Constitution and its relation to taxes and money, you need to understand what a privately owned central bank is. And when you call it a privately owned central bank, the term bank is kind of misleading because what the Federal Reserve is a privately owned central bank, but it's really a privately owned central money manufacturing company. They create money, actually, they create money out of thin air. And so the Federal Reserve is a nonprofit, privately owned organization, and they're supposed to return 100% of their profits to the Treasury over and above their operating expenses. And they don't do that. They only return a little bit of interest. If they were to return the trillions that they loan, the federal government, then we would not need to be taxed.
You actually stumped. Tell me about this guy. You asked him a question and you stumped him.
Well, I don't want to stump people. I'd like to challenge people, and so that we can have,
So who was this guy you asked the question to?
You want me to? He was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Florida. Do I need to say his name? Because he's a great guy. I don't want to really incriminate him.
Well, go ahead.
Because he's a great guy. But it's probably typical for probably almost every member of the U.S. House, I would think.
They can't answer this one question.
Well, I said, okay, and I think this guy's great. I said, Congressman Allen West, when the U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing creates $100 bills, the cost is 15 cents each. That leaves $99.85 pure profit. Whose profit is it? Who owns that $99.85 profit?
And what was his reaction?
He said, I don't know.
So did you think you would get that answer from him?
No, I thought he would tell me. I thought he would legitimize, what I had concluded.
Okay.
Instead of saying, I don't know. Now, that was interesting because he's being a member of the U.S. House. It's his responsibility to understand money and the origin of our currencies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They should all understand
Right.
the origin of the currency.
Yeah, and I
what's
just
going
want to say
on.
briefly, there are three organizations that create new currency. As the economy expands, as the population grows, we need new currency injected into the economy. There are three entities that create new currency. One is the U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing. They create paper money. One is the U.S. Mint. They create all the coins. And then the Federal Reserve System, which creates all the digital money. But something interesting about the U.S. Bureau of Engraving and Printing, I called and was able to talk to someone on the phone there, and they told me that they sell all the money that they print to one exclusive customer. And you know who that customer is. It's the Federal Reserve System, which is privately owned. And they told me that they sell each bill, 100, 10, 50, whatever it is, for the cost of paper and ink, which is about 15 cents per bill.
Wow.
So that leaves a lot of profit.
Okay, well, that is amazing. I want to tell him a little bit more about you. As a matter of fact, you actually asked Donald Trump, a question. I want to show that video. It was actually at a convention. Sure. So can you go ahead and roll the video on that one?
Hello, Mr. Trump. My name is Lloyd Brunson. I'm over here on your right.
Oh.
You've inspired me to create a TV show that'll be broadcast on Fox affiliate in Utah called American Statesman. Well, that's actually what would you do if you were president. So it might be something you'll buy from me after you get out of office.
Sounds good to me.
But the question is, Mr. Ron Paul, when he was running for president, there was a lot of confusion about the Federal Reserve. He said stuff that sounded crazy, like 1.6 trillion of the debt was fictitious. And I saw him on Fox News talking about that. And Lori Rothman, an analyst, said, oh, that's not fictitious. That belongs to the financial markets. And that seemed to prove his point. So could you address that issue a little bit and see if you could...
Well, it's a good point. We have a tremendous problem. We owe $18 trillion. China, think of China. They do all this business, and now we owe them money. How about Japan? Japan is our second largest creditor, $1.4 trillion. We do all of this business. They sell us all of these cars. We owe them money. How does this happen? How does it happen? We have got to get the debt down. We're going to be Greece pretty soon. We're going to be a Greece on steroids. We're going to be up to $24 trillion very soon. That's a big number. That's a sacred number.
Can you do it? Can you do what JFK and President Abraham Lincoln did, and that's take the power to create money back to the government, and that would eliminate taxation
Well,
and
you have
government
to
debt.
you have to bring everything back. But you know what? I believe in free trade. I do. I have a big free trade. But here's the thing with free trade. You have to have smart negotiators. I know the greatest negotiators. I know people that are so nasty, so horrible. They're horrible human beings. You'd hate them, but they're great at what they do. I know people you would not want to have dinner with them. They're horrible people, but they're great at what they do. I put one in charge of Japan. I wouldn't have Carolyn Kennedy negotiating for us. How did you get the job? Well, I asked the government, and what did they say? How would you like to be ambassador to Japan? And now I see Abe, who's a killer, the head of Japan, whining and dining her. We're getting killed everywhere. We would have the greatest negotiators. I know most of them. I know the good ones, the bad ones. I know the ones that are overrated. I know the ones you never heard about that are better than any of them. We would have the greatest, smartest deals you've ever seen. We would bring our deals back. We would bring our manufacturing back. We would bring our money back. Believe me.
Great.
And we have to do that.
Okay, let's stop it right
all
there.
of this-
Okay, so, and you're telling us this whole thing that he's talking about, that we owe China money.
Yeah, well, President
honest.
Trump talks about two things. Well, actually, just one thing. He talks about trade deficit. He never actually gets into the debt that our federal government owes to the government of China. And so it's a little confusing for people to know what the difference is. Should I explain that real quick?
Yeah, really quick.
Well, trade deficit is we sell them more stuff than they sell us. But the actual debt of $1 trillion that we owe China is money that they've loaned our government. And the way they got that money was through a loan from the Federal Reserve System. So the Federal Reserve System loans China $1 trillion. China then loans our government $1 trillion plus interest.
Wow.
So it's
incredible.
yeah. You can kind of connect the dots there and see what's happening.
And there's a lot of information on each one of these little topics. We're kind of going through these little topics really quickly on this first show, just to kind of get you guys warmed up to this. So I want to go and just show quickly how you interviewed Forbes.
Steve Forbes.
And these three different generals.
Dinesh D'Souza and John Stossel.
And John Stossel.
It was just a short little thing.
Okay, and this whole thing was on the idea of what would you do if you were president?
Yeah,
right?
on the television show that I'm working on.
Okay, sounds good. So if you could go ahead and roll that one.
What would you do if you were president of the United States?
If I were president of the United States, I would try to establish a proportional 15% across the board flat tax. I would also establish a foreign policy that was based on the Reagan doctrine, which is simply, we don't invade other countries. Other people fight for their own freedom. They fight. We can help. And I would try to have power decentralized as much as possible to states and local communities so that people can live in what Hayek called a framework of competing utopias.
Briefly, if you were president, what would you do?
Shrink the government by 7/8.
All right, great. Thanks. If you were president, what would you do in like one sentence?
I would get rid of the IRS, get rid of the Fed, and give America freedom again.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty wild. You got these, these are major players in our world market there. So anyway, okay, well, now what makes this Constitution book different than all others? Basically, he says it obsoletes all the others because this has your discoveries in the book as well as quotes, and it even has the Ten Commandments.
It does. It's the first Constitution publication that has the Ten Commandments in it.
Yeah, and he actually shows how the Lord is in the Constitution.
The Lord is in the Constitution, right? You know, we've heard the separation of church and state comments and phrase, and we know that separation of church and state phrase is not even in the Constitution, but the Lord is actually in Article 7, the second clause.
Interesting. And I liked how you did this. You created a poster called the
anti-socialism weapon for your pocket. No concealed carry permit required.
Yeah. Can you bring that up there? There it is right there. Yeah, that's it. The anti-socialism weapon for your pocket. So this is something that everyone should have.
Actually, it's a powerful weapon because every adult basically in government and outside of government have taken an oath where they have a contractual obligation to it, and that's why it's such a great weapon. If we read it and understand it, then we can hold our representatives and judges and others' feet to the fire with it.
And this gives them that extra power because it explains your 7 discoveries. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Lloyd Brunson, and we'll see you guys next time.